Hi, I'm Ross, and in this video I'm going to talk a little bit about bulking as a natural bodybuilder. I'm going to address 2 points first and foremost. Number one is that in my opinion training will always be more important than diet. As a beginner, whilst chronically under eating, you'll still see progress from training, even if the training is not that good at all. As an intermediate, you'll still see progress, assuming your training is decent, whilst under eating, albeit more slowly. On the other hand, as perfect as you can make your diet, if you're not doing any training, you're not going to change your body shape, you're not going to gain any noticeable muscle mass. So by that alone, for me, training will always be more important. And I'm obviously aware of the fact that food is very, very important. If you don't eat any, you're probably going to die. You won't be able to accumulate any muscle mass. But I'm talking about a general Western diet that most people consume, irrespective of whether they train or not. Going from that to a more optimized bodybuilding approach, if you don't train, you still won't see that much of an improvement in your muscle mass. Whereas if you eat inadequately and you start training, then you're going to see a greater improvement in your physique and muscle mass. So for that reason, it's more important to me. I myself built a fairly muscular body initially, just from the sheer intensity of my training. I was consistently under eating, ripped throughout the first few years of my training journey, yet I built a better body. I've trained people from various ages that have been able to build a more muscular body whilst under eating, so it works. But at some point it will slow down and your sensitivity to the training stimulus will decrease, and that's when you need to think more about food and using it as a tool to help speed up the muscle building process and continue to add weight. In fact, I'm confident enough to say that if I were to avoid bulking altogether over the next 10 years and just consume a slight deficit or maintenance of calories every single day, assuming that my training was both consistent and intense, I would be more muscular in 10 years' time than I am now. The difference may be slight, it may not be that noticeable, but I would be confident in saying that my physique would have improved. That being said, I'm also very confident in saying that I would be able to build considerably more muscle mass if I were to follow the same training protocol but overeat on a daily basis within that 10-year period. I'll be able to gain more muscle mass in the same time span whilst overeating compared to a deficit or maintenance of calories. It's about maximising the amount of muscle mass that you can accumulate within a certain time, and bulking will help to speed that process up and maximise your gains as a natural bodybuilder. Over a longer period of time, say 2 years or more, the small daily differences in calories that you consume will add up and accumulate and create a large difference in your body's ability to build more or less muscle mass in that time span. At the end of the day, your body has to build muscle tissue to add it to your frame, and food helps in that process, so it makes sense to make that easy for your body and consume slightly more than you need on a consistent basis. Another point that I wanted to mention, which I think is very, very important and misleads a lot of people, is the lean bulk fallacy and the consumption of stereotypical bodybuilding foods for bulking purposes. The lean bulk fallacy is a notion that you can build a good amount of muscle mass in a relatively short space of time without gaining any fat whatsoever. This is a scam used by Instagram models, YouTubers, to work around the fact that they're using substances to add muscle mass while staying very, very lean. So it is possible to gain muscle mass without any accumulation of fat. It's just extremely unlikely. You'd need to work out exactly how many calories you needed on a daily basis. So your BMR, which would fluctuate on a very regular basis depending on your sleep levels, your stress levels. It would be no good working that out and then setting it a number for a month. You need to be more precise than that. It would need to change on a very regular basis. Then you've got your TDE, which would be your total daily energy expenditure, your BMR plus any movement that you would do in and around training sessions, and that could encompass bending down, tying your shoes, talking, how many times you've gone to the toilet, how many cups of water you've had. I mean, there are too many variables to keep track of, and the apps that are available are nowhere near precise enough for you to work out that number exactly. Then you've got training sessions itself, and the apps used to determine how many calories you burn during a weightlifting session aren't very good at all. Every session would present a new stimulus, which would be slightly harder or easier for the body to recover from, and then set about that rebuilding process to create new muscle mass. How many calories would you need exactly for that, knowing that every single session is different, and you might be starting the session more exhausted than other sessions. And that's not even taking into account the variables within the actual session, the reps, sets and weight used, the intensity of each set, There are just too many variables to keep track of and record this information precisely. So it would be much easier just to consume a little bit more food than you need. Maybe work out your TDEE, add in 250 to 500 calories a day, and consume that for a good 6 weeks or so. Yes, you might gain body fat on a weekly basis, but that's a good sign really, because it shows that you're consuming more than enough food. You've got plenty in your body to be able to set about that rebuilding phase and accumulate more muscle mass, and that excess is being shown as body fat. It's sometimes a good sign that you're bulking effectively. This also goes really hand in hand with the problem of athletes that lie about the amount of food they consume. Or perhaps they're just naive, but if they're naive, they shouldn't be putting that information out there because it's very misleading. This is where I think a lot of hard gainers go wrong. They get caught up in this. Athletes claiming that they're consuming maybe 5,000 or 6,000 calories, and mostly chicken and rice, porridge and egg whites and what have you. It's highly unlikely because these foods are so filling and so very low in calories. You can see here this meal, which will fill you up. It's a decent sized meal, 440 odd calories. To get 3,000 calories a day, you're going to have to consume nearly 7 meals. So when athletes are saying they're consuming double that, eating really clean, it just doesn't make any sense, does it? So you have to think logically that maybe they're lying about the calories they consume on a regular basis, or they are simply consuming other foods to bulk up those calories to reach those targets. I've spoken to so many people over the years that really have been put off by bulking. They're not keen on the idea of sitting down eating 6, 7, 8 meals a day. It's impractical. Even with shakes, eating 3 or 4 good meals a day and then a couple of shakes, it's still a lot of food. Let's be honest, bulking is difficult. There will be times, whatever way you do it, where you have to consume food that you don't want to. You're full up and you've got to get some calories down. For me, it's more difficult than dieting for sure. But it doesn't have to be chicken and rice 7 times a day. In fact, those foods are quite ineffective for bulking because they're very filling and not very calorie dense. So you have to consume a vast volume of food to get those calories in. You're just going to be stuffed all day. Not to mention the time and the money that it costs to eat that amount of food. So for me, as you've seen in the videos, I consume a lot of Thai food, some traditional English food as well. It's all home cooked, very healthy. Very lucky to have a woman that cooks me that kind of food on a regular basis. But you'll see, instead of like chicken breast, it will be a lot of chicken thigh or chicken drumstick, maybe some pork or beef as opposed to chicken. It's important to sometimes have these fattier cuts of meat to build those calories up. Plenty of eggs and not just the egg white, the egg yolk. Obviously, it stores more calories. So there's a lot of things that you can do to make it easier for you to get your calories in. And you'll see here that some of my go-tos, so things like bread, generally quite easy to get down, increase your carbohydrates. Serene malt loaf, very high in carbs, very calorie dense. I might treat myself occasionally to like a pie or a pudding, pork pie, super calorie dense. I don't consume too much gluten, to be fair, and I don't consume any dairy, so I utilise a pea protein isolate or huel, sometimes mix the two together. I've been using that lately to kind of boost the calories up, which is really, really good. I do rate huel quite highly. Some noodles as well as a quick go-to. Not too common. Like I said, I don't consume much gluten, just here and there. So yeah, overall, it's just, for me, as long as I get a couple of meals in, good quality home-cooked food, healthy stuff, and plenty of vegetables, then I'm quite flexible with what I eat thereafter, with the exception of dairy. Don't consume much sugar at all, and not a huge amount of gluten, and I allow myself to be as flexible within that as possible to make it easier for me to consume those 3,000 calories plus that I need to gain weight. Okay, so to sum up, I'd say that initially training is more important than food. However, food's importance increases over time as you become desensitized to the training stimulus. As progress slows down, you'll need to spend more time in a calorific surplus to ensure continued progress, to make it easier for your body to put on weight and therefore muscle mass. You can use bulking and a calorific surplus to speed up the amount of muscle mass that you can put on in a given time, to really maximize the progress in the gym, within a period. I wouldn't get too caught up in the lean bulk shenanigans. I think it's a waste of time, to be honest. You're better off just eating more than you need, and you can track calories or just go off the weight on the scales, the lifts in the gym, and how you look in the mirror. If you're gaining a little bit of body fat every so often, then that's a good indication that you're consuming enough food. Also, wouldn't be too fixed with the notion of just consuming stereotypical bodybuilding foods. Allow yourself to be more flexible and to consume really whatever food that you can to get those calories in. If that means consuming quote unquote junk food to get a good portion of your calories in, then so be it. You have to remember that there's a very, very big difference between eating for body composition and eating for health. They're not related. You can eat very, very healthy and still gain weight. You can eat junk food and still lose weight. You must remember that the two are separate. So I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. If you did, then please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to see more true natural bodybuilding videos. Also, check out the notification icon button to be made aware of any videos I upload automatically. It's a little bell icon. Only 8% of my subscribers are currently notified. And once again, thanks for watching and stay strong.